Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo.
Amateur Traveler, episode 245. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about Art Deco and fashion and string bikinis as we go to Miami.
Got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have two news stories for you. Disney is having a hard time being politically correct as they're being sued by a Muslim employee who wants to wear her headscarf, her hijab, and Disney does not allow their employees to wear anything that would indicate their religion. They do have some accommodations, so they offered her different things that they felt would be within the costume guidelines. The employee did not, so they're trying to figure that out in court. And then speaking of incorrect, there's a flight attendant from Air France who was arrested for stealing from sleeping passengers on overnight flights. An investigation launched in January after 5 Japanese passengers on a Tokyo-Paris bound flight filed complaints with French police alleging that money had been stolen from them during the flight. The total missing from all 5 passengers was 4,000 euros, about $5,000. Of course, this does beg the question of why the heck would you carry $1,000 on your person at any time, let alone on a flight? For links to both those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. This show is again sponsored by Audible.com, the leading provider in audio entertainment. If you want a free 14-day trial, just go to amateurtraveler.com/freebook. I'd asked for recommendations for Audible books. Eric Smith, who's been on the show before, loves Audible and recommended The Geography of Bliss by Eric Weiner. And that's also been recommended to me by Jen Leo of the LA Times. This show is also sponsored by NursingAtSea.com, which I mentioned last week, and that's a cruise for nurses where you can get continuing education credits while you cruise. NursingAtSea.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Kara, who is coming to us from Miami. Kara works for Diamond PR, who I happened to meet all of almost in New York City when I was at the TBEX conference there. Kara, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much.
And thanks for the taco truck at the TBEX conference, too, as long as we're...
You're very welcome. I hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of fun.
I did. I thought it was a brilliant move from a PR move. So you live in Miami and work in Miami and grew up in Miami?
Yes, I was actually born here in Miami, and I've lived in South Florida my entire life. I lived in Miami just until I was about 10 or so, and my family moved a little bit north to Broward County. I went to school in Florida as well. I went to University of Florida, and then after that, I came back to Miami.
Okay, great. And Miami is a place that I've been actually wanting to cover on the show for quite a lot. Now, I thought about it covering myself because I've watched a lot of Miami Vice and I've watched a lot of Burn Notice. So I feel that I am an expert on Miami. Miami, I believe, is full of drug dealers and spies, if I am not mistaken.
Exactly. It's exactly that.
Okay. So
You've never been?
I have been, but it's been many, many years.
Okay.
It's been about 23 years since I've been to Miami.
Well, it's time to come back because it's a totally different place now.
So when I come to Miami, or when your friends come to Miami, what do you take them to see? What makes Miami unique?
There's a lot of things. Typically, I think when people think of Miami, they think of the beaches. And, that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind is that South Beach and that whole scene. And it's absolutely something to see. I mean, the beaches are, I think they've been rated top 10 beaches in the world. There's something like 30-plus miles of beaches in Miami alone, and it's a gorgeous stretch of beach. When you're out on South Beach, the street numbers just from like 1st to 192nd, I think, is what all the way up to North Miami. And it's just one wide stretch of beach, and it's absolutely worth visiting and checking out. And there's really beaches for everyone. I mean, for every kind of visitor. The farther up you get along the beach, I think it gets a little less crowded and less of a scene. For those who are more adventurous, there's HauloVer Beach, which is for those who are into the nude beaches. There's also down the opposite end of the spectrum is South Pointe Park, where it's a great lookout point. So really, the beaches are something that people come here for. Outside of that, I think that the dining scene is probably a really great part of Miami. It's diverse in that everything from the gourmet aspects, there's Pan-Asian, there's fusion, there's steakhouses galore, and then you have very much of a cultural dining scene. There's Little Havana, where you're going to probably get the closest thing to Cuban food you can get outside of Cuba.
In the episode we did on Cuba, they said the biggest casualty of the revolution in Cuba, the three biggest were breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you want Cuban food, go to Miami. So,
well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, Ocho, you can go up and down Little Havana, and from little coffee shops where you can walk up to a window and get a little tostada and probably the strongest coffee you could possibly want. And then there's places like Versailles or La Carreta, or even outside of Little Havana over in Coral Gables, there's a place called Havana Harry's. So, I mean, just the Cuban cuisine, kind of spans the area.
Okay. And just a little geography there. You mentioned being out on South Beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, South Beach, I mean, I live in the Brickell area of South Beach, which is also where our office is, and that's more of a downtown area. And then you cross over, there's the Rickenbacker Bridge, which will take you out to Key Biscayne, which is another area of Miami, which is where you have Crandon Park, and there's some great hotels out there, the Ritz is out there. And then you go over onto South Beach, you cross over the causeway, and South Beach, it's almost like a separate island, but it's attached by these main causeways. And so that's when I say when you go out to South Beach. It's about 5 minutes from downtown Miami, but it almost feels like another world.
Okay. And I just wanted to make sure we covered that for people who didn't have a picture of Miami in their mind. Okay. What's going to surprise me when I go to Miami, or when I go back to Miami in my case?
I think that it's not necessarily, like we said before, what you see on TV. It's not the Kardashians, and it's not the
Belarusian hit squads all everywhere.
You're not going to find drug dealers. You're not going to find, the scene is there, but you don't have to come and be in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of fun things to do outside of that club and nightlife scene. I think you're going to be surprised by the culture and the art and the museums that you'll find here. There's some incredible art shows that are here. Art Basel comes every year. There's great art shows in Coconut Grove has every year around, just in February, like around Valentine's Day, they have a fabulous art show. In South Miami, there's the South Miami Art Show. So, I mean, there's great, fabulous art. And then there's the Design District, which is another neighborhood and entity unto itself. I think it's the second Saturday of every month they have a gallery walk where you can go and all the galleries are open and you go in and you browse them and they serve wine and little bites, and it's a really cool scene.
And now, my understanding is the one part that TV might get closest to being right is that the design scene, the fashion scene in Miami, that there really are that many beautiful people in Miami.
There are. It is a beautiful place, and it could be intimidating, especially you're out on that beach and you're lying there and there's golden bodies and hard bodies and a lot of I think surgically enhanced bodies. Probably the best word, but yeah, I mean, and you also, there's a big Latin culture, Latin influence here, and the Latin women are beautiful. There's absolutely gorgeous people surrounding you when you're here.
Okay, so when a friend comes to visit you, what's the first thing you take them to see?
One of my favorite things to do is to go to Lincoln Road on South Beach, both for the people watching. I mean, the people that come there from all walks of life. I mean, I could sit there for hours at one of the little storefront restaurants or cafes there and just kind of enjoy a drink and watch the people kind of wander up and down there.
And what's your favorite little cafe restaurant in that area?
I like Van Dyke. It's a great little place.
Okay.
Great for brunch. I'll go there often. And also if you go seasonally, there's a fabulous farmer's market and antique market along Lincoln Road. And, you can browse there for hours. You can grab little bites. You can find great treasures there and trinkets at the antique market. It's really a great, just relaxing time to stroll around there. I wouldn't recommend necessarily doing that this time of year.
That was actually my next question, is when would you recommend that people come to Miami? I've been there in August, so I know that August is not the time to go.
Not to come.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for kind of all the seasons. The one actually good thing about coming now in this kind of off-season when it is terribly hot and humid and it's not necessarily comfortable walking around outside for long periods of time, but, we have the water to cool off in. But they do a lot of great things this time of year for that reason. Like right now going on is what's called Miami Spice Month, and it's actually 2 months. It's all of August and all of September when I think it's 100 plus of the top restaurants in Miami participate in Miami Spice. And it's lunch and dinner, or lunch if they're open for lunch, and they offer a 3-course meal either for $22 for lunch or $35 for dinner. And so you get a great sampling of some often pricey menus for a really, really great price and deal. And it's a huge draw and attraction here, and it really helps both the local businesses and gives residents and visitors alike a chance to try some restaurants that they might otherwise not. And probably some of the best and my favorite restaurants participate in it. And then they also do Miami Spa Month, which is this month in August. And it's another one of those things where they take some of their treatments and either they offer them for $50 or for 50% off. And so you can go to some of the fabulous spas, from the Mandarin Oriental Spa to the Ritz and all of the little spas in between, and get just pampered for half the price, basically. So there's a lot to say for coming, during these off-peak seasonal times. But really, if you're coming down to, enjoy yourself outside and enjoy the weather, I'd say starting November through March is that great time, because winter here is, there's a reason snowbirds come here. It's not winter. We don't have seasons, let's be honest. There's summer and, maybe a little bit of spring. But you get those couple months a year when it's just blissfully gorgeous outside and the sky is blue and you go outside and it's crisp and it's enjoyable to walk around outside and enjoy a lot of the outdoor activities that Miami has to offer.
Okay. What did the locals know, let's say in a cultural or historical sort of site, that the guidebooks just miss, tourists don't know about?
I think that there's probably some little local spots and some hidden bars and restaurants that may not be touted. I wouldn't send someone to a place like to Bayfront or something like that. That's just so super touristy. But rather, if you go into Coral Gables or even Coconut Grove.
Those are all 3 neighborhoods?
Yes. There's Coral Gables and Coconut Grove are both great. They have great shopping and they have great dining and little restaurants and bars. And then also, I think that people don't realize that the Brickell area, which is going through a pretty big kind of changes the last few months, there's been a lot of new openings. It used to be very much a business kind of district, and I think downtown still is, which is very much a fine line kind of between where Brickell and downtown separate themselves, but there's just been a slew of new restaurants and shops, and it's becoming more of a destination versus a business area. I'm trying to think what else. You know what you may not hear about necessarily? It's probably because it's newer and it may not be in some of the guidebooks quite yet, is the design district that I mentioned before in the Midtown area. I think every day I'm reading about a new restaurant opening in that area and new shops and boutiques and galleries. I think that's a really cool neighborhood that has a lot to offer. Some fabulous restaurants. There's a place there called Michael's Genuine Food and Drink from Chef Michael Schwartz, and Chef Michelle Bernstein, who's another local kind of celebrity chef, has a restaurant there, Senora Martinez. Just some great spots there and a nice area to kind of walk around and just, again, enjoy the Florida weather when you're not here in August.
What's the best day you've had in Miami?
Probably enjoying, go back to this again, but just a leisurely kind of lazy morning along Lincoln Road and doing brunch either there or somewhere on Ocean Drive and just kind of eating somewhere outside and enjoying kind of looking out either at the people or at the beach across the road and the ocean and just kind of enjoying that scene and that relaxed atmosphere. And then I'd say that would be followed by some kind of, I love the outdoors and I love kind of exercising and being active. There's a great boardwalk along South Beach. It's about a mile or a mile and a half long. And so, you know, a jog along there or rollerblading along Ocean Drive on South Beach and just kind of being outside. And sometimes you just have to stop and look around and realize that you live in a place like this, a place that people come to visit and vacation and a destination unto itself. And it's hard not to take it for granted, kind of being there every day. It's funny, you know, I said before, people automatically think of the beaches when they think of Miami, and it's something that I probably don't take advantage of enough because it's right there and I can go all the time, so you don't. So kind of doing those things that I would take someone to do is a great day because it's not something I do often enough.
What's the best day of the year, specific day to go to Miami?
Well, that's probably depends on who you're asking because there's so many different activities. I mean, it would have to center around an event. If you're looking to come for like that Latin culture that Miami has to offer, Calle Ocho has an incredible carnival that they do, and 1 million plus people come out and they close off 24 blocks of Calle Ocho, and it's an incredible, huge outdoor street festival. So that's going to be an incredible day for someone.
Calle Ocho, so 8th Street?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. I wasn't parsing what you were saying there. Okay.
Yes, Calle Ocho. You know, it's not necessarily one day, but South Beach Food and Wine Festival comes here every year, and that's in February, and that's an incredible festival. I mean, it brings together the best in the culinary business. It runs typically in February, and there's Rachel Ray's Burger Bash and Emerald with his Bubble Q and Guy Fieri, and there's a grand tasting village and wine and food seminars, and it's just a food lover's dream. So that would be a great time of year for someone who's into that.
Okay. How should I get around? I assume I rent the convertible and...
Exactly. Put the top down and go from there. You're not far off, though, because you really do need to rent a car when you're here. Unless you're planning on just going out to South Beach and staying there and not getting off the beach, you know, you can get around in taxi and that kind of thing out there. But if you want to explore more of Miami, which I highly recommend, then a car is the way to go because things are pretty spread out and taxis get expensive. So if you want to come and explore the Midtown and Design District area or Brickell or Coral Gables or the Grove, which aren't far from each other if you have a car, you know, everything's 5 to 15 minutes away or, you know, a little farther sometimes, but it'll add up and it really pays, I think, to have a car when you're here. The public transport is not the best. We have a metro rail system, but it really doesn't get you into the places where you'd want to visit. Same with to be honest, I couldn't tell you about the bus system, but from what I've read, you know, it's not the best way to get around. So your best bet is to get yourself that convertible and just cruise. And it's a gorgeous drive. When you're driving out to the beach or if you're driving over the Rickenbacker and you get the views of either downtown or South Beach as you're coming over and that view at night, I mean, you see why Miami is a place where you visit.
And where should I stay? Where would you recommend?
If you're out on the beach, Delano is great. The newest kind of one out there, the one getting a lot of the buzz lately, is the Fontainebleau, which is a fabulous hotel. It's monstrous. I mean,
that happens to be the only place I have stayed in Miami.
Not recently, though.
Not recently, though.
Yeah, because it was closed, and, I mean, it's huge now. Just, I don't know when it opened, but within the last year, it reopened. I mean, it looks like it belongs on the Vegas Strip now. I mean, it's just monstrous. And it has a huge pool. It's right on the beach. I mean, it's a scene unto itself. If you're going to stay in the downtown area or the Brickell, there's a couple of places. There's the Viceroy or the Epic, which are great. In Coral Gables, there's the Biltmore, which is a very historic hotel, very well known. There's the Mandarin Oriental, which is right on Brickell Key, which is, I guess, also the Brickell downtown area. out on South Beach, there's also the Mondrian, which is a great place. I mean, it's got a great nightlife scene if that's something you're looking for also. Yeah, I think those are all good places to consider. And then South Beach has that, everything has that great Art Deco vibe. So there's some really cool boutique hotels that you can find as well.
Cool. What's one thing you've watched in Miami? You've laughed to yourself and you said, only in Miami.
Well, there's a lot. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is sitting on Lincoln Road as a gentleman comes by on his bicycle with a rooster on the handlebars. Just, zipping down Lincoln Road. There he is, minding his own business, doing his thing, and people stop him and talk to him. But you think to yourself that it's kind of okay here. It's it's kind of normal. But yeah, that's probably one of those only in Miami moments. I think one of the other, in recent news, one of the huge things about Miami that's going to draw a bit of a crowd this year is our newest members to the Miami Heat, which is something definitely worth mentioning, the Bosch, Wade, LeBron trio. I think that if you're in Miami during basketball season, that's going to be a hard ticket to get, but one that's going to be worthwhile. And the arena is right downtown, and it's a gorgeous arena, and it's worth a visit to a game if you're here during season.
Okay. A lot of people coming in and out of Miami for the cruise business, and many of them not actually seeing much of Miami. So if I'm coming through Miami and I'm just there overnight, what's the one thing I should see?
I'd say, depending on where you're staying, I mean, obviously just want to find, one of the great restaurants that Miami has to offer, and just...
If you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
Well, if you're there for your cruise, you're probably a fan of that scene, and there's a restaurant, Smith & Walensky's, that has a great happy hour and a great vantage point of the cruise ship, and you can see them kind of coming in and out of the ports, and it's a really kind of nice, laid-back, relaxed scene, a great place to have a drink. And that's in we call it the south of 5th neighborhood, so it's south of 5th Street, and it's more of a laid-back, kind of relaxed vibe in that area. There's a handful of great restaurants there. One that I know very well is a restaurant called Red's Steakhouse that is originally from Cleveland and just came here, and that one really stands out because of the service. That's one thing about Miami. Great restaurants, not always the greatest service in all of them, and that one stands out for that reason. They really have a fabulous trained staff, and outside of that, I mean, the food is incredible. And then there's Joe's Stone Crabs, which is a mainstay and kind of place everyone knows about, but it's one of those places that doesn't take reservations. So you could go there and you will wait during stone crab season. So if you don't mind the wait, then Joe's Stone Crab is a great place to go and enjoy that.
Okay. One thing I should know and one thing I should pack before I go to Miami.
Well, I guess the obvious would be a bathing suit and sunscreen. But, yeah, I mean, lots of sunscreen. I don't think people realize how strong the sun is, and it's a city to be outdoors in. So you're out there a lot. Pack your sunglasses, pack your sunscreen.
And your rooster.
You may want to pack your rooster, your overalls and your rooster. One thing you should know before coming to Miami, I guess it depends on what your expectations are. You hear a lot and see a lot about celebrity buzz, and there's the beautiful people, and they're out in their clubs, and they are, but it's not all glitz and glamour, but in a good way, in that you don't have to be dressed to the nines every night. You don't have to be wearing your little black dress and your sports coat to go to dinner or to go out at night. You can find those really casual, cool, relaxed places and just enjoy the local people and just be at ease.
Well, I think we're all glad that I don't have to be wearing my little black dress. As we go to wind this down, finish this sentence for me. You really know you're in Miami when what?
I want to say when a girl walks by in a G-string and you don't look twice. You really know you're in Miami when you can wake up and have a typical Cuban breakfast and then find yourself paddleboarding on the beach an hour later and finish the day inside with a steak dinner sitting next to J-Lo.
Excellent. Anything else that you think we really need to mention about Miami before we finish?
I think one thing that I haven't touched on is kind of the active outdoor scene that you can find here, and even just specifically on the water, I mean, like I just said, there's great and kind of new to the scene here newer is paddleboarding. You can kite surf, you can kayak. There's great paths for rollerblading, and biking is big here. They actually have a BikeMiami day. I think it's monthly, or they used to be monthly. Just outdoor jogging. I mean, like we were saying before, there's beautiful people here, and people aren't always naturally beautiful, and people work hard at it, and you can tell that, from the outdoor nature of people, and just seeing everyone out and about and enjoying the sun and the great atmosphere that Miami has to offer. I think also there's a newer performing arts center, the Adrian Arch Performing Arts Center, which is in the kind of Midtown area, and it's a gorgeous complex, and some fabulous shows come through there that are worth seeing if you're in town. And there's something playing, I think, coming up in the next few months. Is Jersey Boys is going to be here in the Heights. I think I just saw that Seinfeld is going to be performing there in November. So there's a great kind of cultural scene in that respect as well. And again, in that area, because of the Adrian Arch Center, there's been some great new restaurants and things that have been opening up there. So that's a fabulous night in Miami.
Hearing the Jersey Boys are playing in Miami reminded me of the New York comic who said, "My parents just moved down to Miami. They didn't want to, but it's the law."
Exactly, yeah. Although, that's probably one thing you had mentioned before, something that you'd be surprised or has changed since then. It used to be very much that way. It was the snowbirds and people retiring down here, but I think that's not quite as much, and it's definitely still coming down here.
I don't think to that part of Florida as much anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the Golden Girls here in Miami, and there's a little further north, I think, than the scene that many people come down to see and enjoy.
Okay, excellent. As we go to wrap this up, last question. If you had to summarize Miami in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
I'd say 3 words to sum up would be diverse, energetic, and hot. But hot in every aspect of the word.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, there's a reason they called it the Miami Heat. I thought that was one of the most appropriately named teams.
Exactly.
Kira, thanks so much for coming on The Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love of your hometown of Miami.
Sure, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Scott left a comment on the recent episode for Namibia, saying he really enjoyed the group interview, had a nice change of pace and very engaging. There were 3 guests, as you may recall, in that interview. I will tell you, it does make the editing a lot harder, so you may or may not see more of that coming up in the future. But it worked out well with those guests who just managed not to talk over one another, which is kind of what I was afraid of. I had a wonderful email from Trisha. You may remember Trisha as the person who I met at the New York City meetup who didn't realize she was coming to a meetup, thought she was on a date, and wondered who this third person was. Trisha is now on the road with Joseph, who was our guest for the Malawi show. Happy summer to you and your family. I hope you've been enjoying retirement to work on The Amateur Traveler. The website looks great. I have really missed catching up your podcast shows, updates, etc. while traveling. It would have been great to be able to listen to new shows on my iPod while on multiple 12-hour bus rides. Instead, I just listen and listen again to the shows I had, and yes, I am still a diehard fan. And it's a longer email, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Tricia talked about she loved the show on Borneo and gave a list of all the places that she loved. And one thing I would encourage Tricia to do, and also the rest of you, I am taking more guest posts, and this sounds like a great guest post of great things to see in Borneo. I think we had 3 or 4 guest posts this week from listeners of this show, so you might want to check those out at amateurtraveler.com. We had one on seeing Kings Canyon and Sequoia. We have another one that's going up on a trekking experience in India. And I think we have a couple other ones coming up as well. So check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes to the guest post guidelines for the Amateur Traveler. Also, I've had a number of emails recently that said things like, I see you didn't have a show on, and then listed some country that I have in fact done a show on. So that just said that it wasn't that easy to tell from the website. So now, if you go to, for instance, europe.amateurtraveler.com, you will see a list on that page of all of the countries in Europe, including some which are debatably in Europe. And those that I've done a show for have a link that goes over to all of the content that has been posted on the Amateur Traveler for that country. So it makes it real easy to see which countries I'm missing, as well as which countries there's content for. So I hope that helps, and that's true for all of the different geographic regions, for Pacific, for Asia, for Middle East. And some things are listed in multiple places when it's not clear, for instance, is the Republic of Georgia in Asia or is it in Europe? If you work for a company that is in the travel area or for a CVB, a Convention and Visitors Bureau, I would be interested in getting information about who would be the appropriate person to talk to about potentially doing a sponsorship of the Amateur Traveler. If I can sell some sponsorships, I might be able to continue to do this full time, otherwise probably not. And it's almost midnight here on Friday night, and I need to get some sleep, so I think we're going to wind this show down. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com or leave a comment on the episode like Scott did. And remember, you can also catch me on Twitter at Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.